All right, welcome everyone. Live here. Let's see, trying to go live on Instagram too. All right, I think I got it. So we have a special show today. We have a guest. His name is John Boyd. He's a financial planner. He's a certified financial planner, CFP, which is pretty impressive credential. As an attorney, I really respect the CFPs. I know they've had to do extra training and they understand more than someone that's just passed an insurance test. So let's bring in John. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Super stoked to be here.
All right, so why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sounds good. So, name is John Boyd. I'm a certified financial planner. I'm the founder and lead wealth advisor over at Modern Wealth. It's modern spelled with no vowels, wealth. We're a fiduciary wealth and tax planning firm. We're headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona, but we serve clients really all over the country. Ironically enough, even though we're headquartered here in Arizona, most of our clients are actually in LA area, San Francisco, and New York City. So some of the highest tax places that you can possibly be in, that's where most of our clients are. And a big reason for that is we have a special emphasis in tax planning. I think when people think of your traditional financial advisor, they think about stocks, bonds, somebody trying to sell insurance, right? Stuff like that. We're a fiduciary fee only firm. So that means that we don't do commissions. We have to legally act in our client's best interest. And while we do, investment planning, stuff like that, that's obviously super important. And we love that stuff. We fundamentally believe that a client's tax plan is the foundation of their overall financial plan. Taxes are the single biggest expense that we're all going to pay throughout our life. So why not have a team that is dedicated to helping you save every penny possible from a tax planning standpoint?
Yeah, so we met at an event. I was a little late. I had to go mountain biking. It was a nice day. I had to. The ride took a little bit more than what I thought, so
You got it,
I
man.
showed up late, all sweaty.
Yeah.
but but yeah, I was really impressed though. So like you said, most financial advisors are like, yeah, whatever. It's probably gonna be about stocks, bonds, some
Yeah.
investments. But I was really excited to hear how you went into some tax planning, kind of some nerdy stuff, and that's what I want to talk about today. But yeah, it was really it was nice to see your passion for that tax planning, and I guess
Yeah.
I'm weird in that way too. But it's people like to brag about how much money they make, but that's only one thing. It's how much do you keep in your pocket? How much do you take home? And that's a whole other story. So that's where these strategies can really help.
Yeah. Yeah. Super stoked to talk about them.
So yeah, do you have some materials? Do you want to take us through some of the popular strategies?
Yeah. So, obviously tax planning, there's tons of different strategies that are out there, tons of tax mitigation techniques that exist. But one of my personal favorites that I love to deploy when applicable is taking advantage of something called bonus depreciation and utilizing that to reduce our client's overall tax bill. So I'll give you an example of that. I very recently we had a client that signed on. They make around last year they made around $1 million in income, so pretty significant tax bill. And a lot of that was due to the fact that one of the spouses in the relationship had an IPO that they were a part of. So whenever you're part of an IPO, that's going to drive up your income to the moon. And that's exactly the situation that they were in. So, we're going through their overall
So
balance sheet.
good problem to
Yeah,
have.
good problem to have.
So
But
IPO, initial public offering. So she was a part of
yep,
a company that went public. She
yep,
owned stock, and
yep.
then so that's a taxable event. Then, so once it goes public, does it get
Yeah.
it's considered income then, or did she sell her stock? Was she planning on selling it and realizing it?
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with how IPO taxation is, and basically what happens is that these employees of these privately held companies oftentimes get private shares or RSUs as part of their compensation. And those RSUs, or the stock that they receive, effectively isn't worth anything while the company is private. But the moment that the company IPOs and they now have, there's a public stock exchange where they can sell those shares of stock, the IRS says, okay, all those shares that you've been receiving, all those years that you've been working at this company, they've been piling up behind the scenes. Well, now all of them, that's taxable income. So what ends up happening is that somebody might have like $50,000 worth of stock that they receive every single year working at a company like that. It's worth nothing. They don't pay any tax on it when they receive it. But if the company IPOs, you pretty much have like 7 years worth of bonuses, hit you at once. Plus, if the company IPOs at a high price, we're talking people that are overnight millionaires. It's a crazy situation for them to be in.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, a bunch of income, and then sorry to interrupt you, but a bunch of income these people had, and then in a year. So then what did you do?
Yeah. So part of our process when we're trying to effectively turn over every stone possible to reduce someone's taxable income. So we're going through their balance sheet, we're seeing what we can do, and we find that there's a rental property. And in addition to that, it's an Airbnb. And so what we're able to do is we deployed a cost segregation study to take advantage of bonus depreciation. That allowed us to effectively claim on paper an over 6-figure loss in the year that they had all this taxable income come in. And we'll talk about the nuts and bolts of how that worked in a second in case you want to deploy it yourself.
So how long had they owned this rental property?
They had purchased it back in 2020. So around now 4 years that they've owned it.
And okay, so they've owned it for 4 years and
had no idea about this.
Wow, man, what great value you provide.
Yeah, we try.
It's like wait a minute. And again, that's so earlier you said you're a fiduciary. So break that down for people just quickly, what that means as a fiduciary, as opposed to just like a regular financial advisor. I think most are fiduciaries now, but break that down real quick.
Yeah. So I think the classic example of an advisor that is not a fiduciary is the advisor that you hear about that sells you like a commission-based product. Someone that exclusively is in the business of selling insurance and saying that they're a financial advisor, right? The industry wanted to have some regulation around that. And so this term fiduciary came into play. So being a certified financial planner, which is the highest designation that you can have in wealth management, you have to be a fiduciary. You have to act in your client's best interest. And what that means is that you're not allowed to make a recommendation that benefits you and it not benefit the client the most. So for example, like someone who wants to push a particular product, they legally cannot do that, and they can't hold the CFP designation if they're going to claim to be a fiduciary. So it protects the consumer a lot more. It makes sure that you have someone who's not a bad actor just trying to sell you stuff. But the reality is that it's kind of an oversaturated term nowadays. I think that you can really disseminate who's the best of the fiduciaries by just seeing the type of work that they do.
Yeah, and this story you're telling is a good example of it. Because you're looking at their income taxes, situation, and you're looking at all of their assets for a total solution.
Right. Well, I mean, good example with that, right? I mean, a lot of financial advisors who are very investment centric, the first thing they're thinking is, well, shoot, you got over $1 million in stock coming in. Let's sell it all and let me invest it for you and let me charge you on that. That's not where our head went, right? We were much more prioritized in how do we save as much as possible from a taxation standpoint, because you have a tax bomb about to punch you in the mouth, right? So that's acting in the client's best interest and doing the right thing. And this is a ton of work. It's multiple meetings. We'll show you kind of how it works. But yeah, that's the important thing.
Yeah. So break it down. So briefly explain what is depreciation and
Yeah, for sure. So let me go ahead. I can share my screen, break it down for you guys. All right. So let me go ahead and pull up. All right. So let me pull up this first screen here. Let me know if you're able to see.
There we go.
Cool. You able to see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Sweet. So, so depreciation, if you're not familiar with the concept of depreciation, when you buy a rental property, let's say, okay, the IRS every single year fundamentally understands that a house there's going to be wear and tear, it's going to get old. And so they want to throw you a bone and say, okay, you can take a quote loss every single year on that property. And but there's a special formula to determine what that loss is. So in this example, what you're looking at here, we're looking at somebody that purchased a $500,000 rental property. So $500,000 rental property. By default, the IRS says that property will depreciate over a 27.5-year period of time. They don't allow you to depreciate the land. Okay. So just land around the property. They say land's always going to be there. The dirt in the ground will always be there. So you can't depreciate that, but everything else, the stove, the floor, the roof, the driveway, even, right, will let you depreciate. So all you're going to do very simply here, take the purchase price, $500,000, sub out the percentage of that is considered land, non-depreciable land, and take 27.5 and divide it by 500,000. Yep.
Is there a way? Well, can you make that bigger? And then also, is there a way? Is the land always 25% or?
So it depends. Is that a little bit bigger for you guys?
Yeah, there we go. That's better.
Cool. So it depends. So for a standard rental property that most people will have, it's going to be 27.5 years. If it's, let's say an Airbnb,
not the 27.5. I mean, like how much is land? Like,
how much is land?
This is 500,000. How do you figure out how much or what percentage is the land and what is the building?
Yeah. So you can go to the county assessor's website wherever you live, and with the county assessor, they're going to have records on every single property in that county, and they're going to have that classification for you. So they're going to have the classification of whether it's 10%, you have 10% non-depreciable land, 15%, 20, 25, etc. So you can look that up. It's all public records, and find out what the non-depreciable basis of your rental property is.
Okay, got it. So yeah, so you're not choosing that. It's on the assessor.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, you can't make that up yourself. It's all, public information. The IRS is aware of it. It's with the assessor. Like that's where all that information's at. So let me go ahead and change. So this was it written out, the formula. So $500,000 basis, or the purchase price, the land value is 25%. We're going to strip out that 25%. We're now left with $375,000. You're going to divide that by 27.5, and that's your annual depreciation. Now,
so depreciation, so it's kind of like wear and tear, like you said. So IRS, Uncle Sam says, okay, like this property is wearing out over time, so it's fair to deduct some of that every year.
Correct. So that depreciation every single year, you get to use to reduce other forms of, quote, passive income that you receive. So passive income sources, according to the IRS, so these are things like rental income. Most rental income is going to be considered passive. Dividends, interest, capital gains from portfolio, right? Those are considered generally passive income sources. And this is one reason why most rental properties, at least from a tax perspective, show a quote loss every single year. It's because the rental income that you receive, once you factor in depreciation, your expenses, all that good stuff, you're probably looking at a loss. And so effectively that rental income that you receive is tax free. And a big part of that is that annual depreciation that you take every single year.
All right, great. All right, keep it going. Good stuff.
So there's a couple of things that come to mind here, and we're going to address both of them. So number one is $13,636 is cool, right? That's great. But I mentioned that example earlier with that client who made, $1 million. A $13,000 loss really isn't going to move the needle a whole lot for them. So how can we move the needle more, right? Because again, $13,000 for someone like that isn't a crazy amount in losses relative to the return. So what you can go ahead and do is do something called a cost segregation study. So similar example, you could ignore the 27 and a half year mark right here is interchangeable depending on the property type. So don't get too caught up on that. But for so what we're going to go ahead and deploy is something called a cost segregation study. And so what this allows us to do is say, all right, IRS, it's unrealistic to assume, going back to this chart, it's unrealistic to assume that, sure, the land's not going to depreciate ever, but the rest of the property is going to depreciate over 27 and a half years. That's ridiculous, right? My stove that I have, my refrigerator that I have, the roof, right? All that stuff might depreciate a lot quicker than 27 and a half years. I want to take depreciation on that stuff sooner. So what the IRS allows you to do is they throw you another bone. They say, okay, if you go ahead and classify what is considered 20-year depreciable life or less, 20-year depreciable life or less, we will allow you to take all the depreciation associated with that, take it all in year one. That's called bonus depreciation. So they don't let you figure that out yourself. You have to hire an engineering firm generally and do something what is called a cost segregation study. They come in your property. They actually classify every component of that rental property, 15-year life, 5-year life. If it's an Airbnb, in this example right here, this chart, it would be 39-year life for the rest of it. And of course, the land. They do all that classification for you. And the reason why you'd want to do this is, if we fast forward here, the depreciation that you'd be able to take of the property that is 20 or less, you'd be able to take that in year one. So rather than your depreciation being just $13,636 in year one, it is now, in this example, $134,090. That moves the needle significantly more than $13,636.
Yeah. So you're saying $1 million of income, they get to subtract $134,000 from that $1 million of income.
So this is the second part, and somebody watching this may already be thinking this. So I mentioned earlier how the IRS allows you to take this depreciation, right? Sources of depreciation from rental property. They allow you to use those losses to offset other forms of passive income. Okay. So passive income, again, rental income, dividend income, stuff like that. If you have, let's say, business income, W-2 income from a job, stock options, RSUs, right? Stuff like that from an employer that's classified as W-2 income, then you aren't going to be able to use this depreciation to offset your all that $1 million income that they have. So in that case, if we did this cost segregation study unlocked all this bonus depreciation, they would be, at least on the surface, doesn't look like they could do much with it. But there is a loophole around it, and that's the short-term rental loophole. So I'll go ahead and stop screen sharing for a second.
Yeah, so you're saying if it was a long-term rental property, it'd be a different story. So if it was a long-term rental property, it can only offset other passive income sources. But short-term is a very different story. Short-term Airbnb is considered short-term, and that's more of a job, right? Right. So therefore, it can offset your regular income. Is that how it works? Airbnb and short term can.
In a nutshell, basically what happens is the easiest way to think about it, because again, all this information can be like drinking water through a fire hose. The easiest way to think about it is the IRS, if you're going to claim a loss, they want you to work for that loss, as crazy as that sounds. So taking depreciation from just your run-of-the-mill rental property, they don't think you really work that hard for it. So they're going to say, hey, you can only take that depreciation and any losses associated. You can offset it against other rental income and passive sources, but you're not going to be able to use it to offset. Let's say you make $500,000 at your job. You can't use that money to offset that income. However, with a short-term rental, like an Airbnb, if you operate an Airbnb business with your short-term rental, then the IRS almost views it as a hotel effectively. Like a lot of the same language where you see some of the tax write-offs that you're able to have if you have, like, let's say a bed and breakfast, similar taxation in many cases.
Which makes sense. It is closer to a hotel. Furnished rental, furnished short-term rental.
And so that was really the $1 million piece of the equation when we did this due diligence for this particular client, was that we found, number one, that they had the rental property on their balance sheet. We then probed and asked questions. Well, what do you do with rental properties? Is it a short-term rental, a long-term rental? And they said it's a short-term rental. The moment they said that, that's when the light bulb went off and said, we have $1 million opportunity right here to take advantage of bonus depreciation and use all that income to offset their W-2 income, or use all those losses to offset their W-2 income.
Yeah, let me ask you about another one. So a lot of people watching this are probably real estate investors. So if they're a true real estate professional, does it also count, like a designated real estate professional?
Yeah. So if you are considered a real estate professional in the eyes of the IRS, then you don't have to worry about.
In the eyes of the IRS is the key there. Not that you think you are. How does the IRS classify it? I would like to say I am, because I do some stuff, but the problem is most of my income is still from my law firm. So I feel like once I shift that, if I had more income coming in from other sources, once I can show that I have more income, then maybe. But I think probably also where my time is though as well too, right? If I have a lot of time invested in my law firm, they're gonna be like, you're a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing. So if you don't want to worry about the short-term rental loophole, then of course you could.
We don't say loophole. We say tax code.
Yeah. I mean, it is 100% legal. I mean, it is nicknamed out there. If you look up short-term rental loophole, or maybe that will pull up.
That's probably good for YouTube, huh? That would have been a better thumbnail.
Yeah, loophole, tax loophole. I mean, they would have got people to tune in.
Yeah, but tell us more about. So what is how can you be an IRS? How can you be a real estate professional according to the IRS?
Yeah, so in order to be a real estate professional in the eyes of the IRS, there is a pretty stringent test that they want you to pass. You have to have very clear documentation on it. There's multiple parts to that test. In a nutshell, you need to be putting into real estate roughly, it's like almost 40 hours a week in work that you're putting into real estate. And then on top of that, just simply doing, computer behind the scenes, just management, stuff like that. The IRS doesn't think that's good enough, right? They want you to like getting your hands dirty, like being really involved in the management of the real estate that you have, which is why 99% of people, even if they have lots of rental properties, it is very, very rare for them to qualify as a real estate professional. Really, the only profession that kind of gets a pass with it is our realtor folks out there, since the IRS views their activities as a realtor, oftentimes count towards the hours that they need to be classified as a real estate professional. So we've worked with clients where maybe they have a spouse who stays at home with the kids, doesn't work a ton. They become a realtor strictly to try to classify, to have the family take advantage of all those, cool elements to like take the depreciation, offset your job income.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thanks, John. Thanks for your time today. Any other just quick topics that people should know about, or any other things you like helping people with?
Yeah. So a couple things really quick. So number one, with bonus depreciation, again, let me just make it all real for you. This is something that we do literally with our clients. So, and let me know when you can see my screen.
There we go.
So this is an example of a software that we use with our clients. So this is one of our tax projection tools that we use to model out different tax scenarios, things like that. We can quite literally manipulate every single line of their 1040 to see what would happen if we deployed a particular strategy, took out a certain amount of income, whatever it is. In this case, what you're looking at is you're looking at a family on the left side, somebody who had made $200,000 in W-2 income. And on the right, same exact scenario, but what we went ahead and did was we modeled in a cost segregation study and taking advantage of the bonus depreciation. In this particular example, we were able to take advantage of that short-term rental loophole, take $168,000 in losses that directly reduced their total income. Because again, we were taking advantage of that element of the tax code. So now their total income drops all the way to $31,819. When we fast forward, what's the bottom line that they save just in federal taxes alone? We're looking at $27,420 in taxes saved by deploying this particular strategy. So really, really powerful stuff. And again, it shows the importance of really proactive tax planning.
Yeah. And then the power of real estate, that's why there's so many fans of real estate, because of these tax codes that allow you to reduce your income taxes. I know it's not uncommon for most real estate investors to pay zero net taxes, because they just, they make sure they buy enough properties to offset their income.
Yeah. I think the couple things that, viewers should know, especially with bonus depreciation, is that as of right now, it's quite literally, we're waiting any day now for the Senate to get rolling on this. But bonus depreciation, as part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that was passed in 2017, was set at 100%. So if property, let's say in 2019 as a short-term rental, you could take 100% bonus depreciation. So whatever the formula is that we did right here, you could take 100% of that number and use it to offset your W-2 income, let's say. Right now, though, it's currently being phased out depending on when you place the property in service. So if you bought a property in 2024, turned it into a short-term rental in 2024, and took advantage of bonus depreciation, as of now, you'd only be able to take advantage of 60%. But if this legislation gets passed, which there's a lot of bipartisan support around it, it will go back up to 100%. So that's the first thing to be aware of. The second thing to be aware of is a lot of folks don't realize that, like, for example, the example that I used, they had that Airbnb back in 2020. And yet here we are years later, and they're just now finding out about bonus depreciation. That is incredibly common, where people will have the property that is eligible for bonus depreciation and had zero idea that they could take advantage of that element of the tax code. So if that's you, it's not too late to do it. You're just going to have to work with someone like Modern Wealth, hopefully, that does proactive tax planning and to model out, does it make sense to deploy? Can you even qualify, et cetera?
Yeah, the other thing I would bring up too is if they sell the property, you have to recapture that, right? You got the deduction, but it lowers the basis. So if they go to sell the property, then that's got to be accounted for.
That's correct. So the recapture element, you'll have to deal with the recapture issues down the road. However, the legal loophole to that is exploring a 1031 exchange that would wipe away any recapture issues.
Yeah, 1031 into another property. Or another good thing is good estate planning. That's where that pays off too. So I have a lot of clients that have low basis properties they've had for years and have used them to save taxes. And their plan is to let the kids inherit it, and the kids get a new step up in basis to the fair market value as of the date of death. So it's interesting. Estate planning, the estate tax used to be a lot higher when I first started my career and in college. Then it got moved up to 5 million and 10 million. It doesn't affect very many people. However, though, the income tax does. And so we take more consideration about getting another step up in basis in assets.
Right.
The old traditional A-B trust, with the B trust being the irrevocable side, that does not get another step up in basis on the second death.
Yep.
So we don't do those anymore. Where people need to split things, I do I call it an AC trust. So where the irrevocable one is actually a Q-tip. And then I set it up so people can actually choose a tax treatment because, well, for a few reasons. It's always moving is the one thing, right? It's kind of fluid. So instead of making the choice right now, they can choose, after someone's passed away. But usually the way it works is they can max out that C trust, meaning they have a full exemption amount, which is currently like 12.9 million. It usually makes sense to do that. If it's that large of an estate, max it out so that way they don't get hit with the estate tax again later.
Nope.
Or if not, it's better to not pay the estate tax. Use what's it called? File the estate tax return so they can use the exemption later. Portability. Yeah. And then so that way the surviving spouse has the exemption of the first spouse that died, and then the kids can get another step up in basis on those assets when they pass away.
Right. That's I'm so glad you're bringing up the estate tax piece, because I think because it's gone up so much, I think a lot of people have just forgotten about it and don't really realize it's a thing anymore. But I think the reality is that as of now, it's supposed to sunset back down to an inflation adjusted, prior level.
The 5 million. So Trump doubled it from 5 million to 10 million adjusted for inflation. And I think it's set to go back in 2026. So that 5 million adjusted, which is something like 6 million now.
Something like 6. I've heard some people say 7, but but I think the reason why I bring that up is that there's so many people that are maybe watching this that are real estate, folks that are building up these really sizable portfolios of real estate, stocks, bonds, cash, whatever it may be. And their net worth is aggressively growing. And one thing that, I've done throughout my career, especially for someone in that position where we model out like, all right, maybe there's going to be estate tax issues down the road, is explore strategies to perhaps lock in that lifetime exemption while it's super juicy and high. You have anything in mind just regarding real estate on how we could perhaps like take advantage of that big juicy lifetime exemption before it drops down?
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it. So if you're worried about it going away, the key is to lock in now and kind of give away, and um, if you think it's going to go down. So there's some strategies to do that. I usually don't get into that type of planning, where because it is changing quite a bit. And
Yeah.
a married couple right now can pass like over 25 million with zero
Yeah.
estate tax planning. But I do look at some of like the income tax issues on kind of the underlying things, because even if you're
Yeah.
less than, if they lower it down to 6 million, even if you're less than that, there's still some income tax consequences to look at, and how things are going to be inherited.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's huge. It's
yeah.
huge.
Well, thank you, John. This was fun. I appreciate it. I have John's info up on the screen. You can reach out to him at modernwealth.com and for any tax planning needs, and maybe we'll have him come on here again.
Thanks so much for having me. Ton of fun. Looking
All
forward
right,
to it.
thanks.